Sector 2 looks like an upside down bunny. Hello, my name is Alex Does F1 Stuff and welcome back to a race weekend review for round number 15 for the Bahrain Grand Prix around the Bahrain International Circuit, in which Sector 2 definitely looks like an upside down bunny or an upside down duck. Anyway, with that random little thing out of the way, welcome back to a race weekend review for the, I was about to say penultimate, the triple penultimate? Penultimate's the second to last. Is there a word for third to last? I don't know. Anyway, it's the third to last race of the season. 3 races left in a triple header, and we are doing a race weekend review. So let us jump straight on into the little contents page, skip to whichever segment of the video you would like me to talk about, practice, qualifying, or the race, or you could sit through the entire thing and listen to me ramble from all points. But it is currently Friday, it has just gone 5:30 in the afternoon, and we are covering practice. And practice number uno starts us off, and it is led by both Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton on top by just under half a second from Valtteri Bottas in P2. Now, first thing to note in practice 1 is temperatures are slightly warmer than they will be in the race as they run the session during the day, and also they were running some different compounds. They were running a compound that is being run next year, and all of the drivers hated it. No one liked it. It was about a second a lap slower, some drivers were saying, especially Lewis Hamilton. He was the most critical. As I was watching some interviews that he did afterwards, he really didn't like the tyre, saying Pirelli had 2 years to develop a better tyre, and they haven't. But to be honest, that was the first I'd actually heard that Pirelli were bringing in a new tyre for next year. I was not aware at all until the commentators were saying, oh, some teams are testing different tyres for next year. They do 6 timed laps in practice 1 or practice 2, whichever they want, so Pirelli can gather the data in order to improve it. And seeing as not many people liked the damn thing, they're going to have to do a lot of improvements. But looking slightly further down the order, we have Sergio Perez, Carlos Sainz and Pierre Gasly. Racing Point, McLaren and AlphaTauri all within half a tenth of each other. That is ridiculous. Three midfield teams within half a tenth of each other. If this speed can continue and can translate throughout the rest of this race weekend, that is going to be bonkers. I think that's the closest that 3 separate teams have been this entire year. That is crazy. Then next up, we have the Red Bulls in P6 and P7. 1.2 seconds off of the Mercedes. That's quite a hefty margin to have in practice 1, considering I've been expecting Red Bull to be a little bit closer to Mercedes, as Mercedes have officially stopped their development of this year's car, and Red Bull have been slowly catching up. They didn't really have a particularly eventful session in practice 1. They were testing the 2021 tyres along with most of the other teams, but that was about it. Other than that, nothing really happened in practice 1. Then looking slightly further down the order, we have a squishy looking trio of a Racing Point sandwiched between 2 Renaults, with Ferrari down in 11th and 12th. They've sort of dropped off just a little bit from the pace that they had in Turkey. I know Turkey was a bit of an outliery race due to the fact there was no grip, sort of equalising people, but it's a bit disappointing to see that they have dropped off and they're outside of the top 10. But again, it's only practice 1, and as we know, teams like Renault haven't necessarily performed well in practice 1, and then in practice 2, they actually increase their speed and show a little bit more potential. Then Kubica was in the car for Alfa Romeo, and he was comfortably ahead of Giovinazzi. I was quite surprised of that, with both Alfa Romeos in front and behind the 2 Haas cars. Kvyat down in P17, Norris P18, and Williams last by a lot. I thought this phase was behind us now, looking at the promising start to 2019, but their development throughout the year hasn't been there. They also had Nissany in the car as well, and he was massively off the pace of Latifi, and Latifi has been massively off of the pace of Russell, so that kind of says something about that. The car just hasn't progressed through this year. It started off well, and it looked like they were genuinely making some decent improvements, and now it's all sort of fallen apart. But that is the end of practice 1, and we will jump straight on in to practice 2, which is again topped by the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. He has led both practice sessions once again for however many times this season, I don't know, but it is Max Verstappen that is actually P2 with Valtteri Bottas in P3. Red Bull slightly picking up the pace a little bit, but still not quite there. Then we've got Sergio Perez continuing Racing Point's strong form. Now, Racing Point are looking very, very strong. I said in my pre-race review that I don't think Racing Point are going to be the team to beat. I'm kind of looking like a bit of a mug right now. But Renault is right behind them. Daniel Ricciardo sits P5, and then it is Pierre Gasly and a McLaren, all very close. Not as close as practice 1, I will admit, but all within a few tenths of each other. So it is still an intensely fought battle for that midfield, but it's definitely looking like Racing Point have the edge. But I'm still not going to count all those eggs or all those chickens, just whatever the saying is about it. I still feel Renault can do something in the race over Racing Point. McLaren can definitely get in that mix, and it looks like AlphaTauri are doing a stellar job. And speaking of the AlphaTauris, there is a picture of Pierre Gasly doing extremely well down in P6. Then Kvyat is also in the top 10 as well, so both AlphaTauris are working well. Normally it's only Gasly, and then Kvyat is somewhere just outside of the top 10. But to see Kvyat inside the top 10, and also not too far off of Pierre Gasly, it is really good to see that he's actually just a little bit closer to Gasly than he has been throughout this whole season, as there's been these rumours actually that he will be dropped completely from the sport. Obviously it's nothing credible as nothing has come out, but that wouldn't surprise me entirely. And it would be a really sad end to his Formula 1 career, full of just undulations and just everything, all courtesy of the Red Bull driver program. But then we get to Alex Albon in P10, and he had a bit of an accident. Pushing a little bit too hard into the last corner, went a little bit wide, understeered slightly, kept his foot in it, got onto the dusty sandy bit of the track just on the outside of the curb, and then got a snap of oversteer and into the barrier. Lots of damage on at least 3 corners of the car, if not all 4, as he managed to hit the barrier and then spin all the way around. Yeah, it's not ideal. It's really dented his confidence, really, well, dented the team, as they've got a massive repair job to do now, and it's not what they want at all, especially when you see someone like Sergio Perez performing as well as he is. That seat is massively, massively up for grabs at the moment, and Albon just doesn't seem like he's doing enough to make Red Bull want to keep him. Then looking slightly further down the order, we have the 2 Ferraris in 12th and 14th, but it is actually Sebastian Vettel who leads the pair over Charles Leclerc, which hasn't happened too often this season, and hopefully he can actually continue that forwards. And I think after that podium in Turkey, he's had a much better outlook on just generally performing, I would say. And it's seeming like he's had a little bit of a rejuvenated step after a miserable 3 quarters of 2020. That podium has certainly helped. Then unfortunately, looking further down that order once again, we've got Alfa Romeo just in front of Haas, who are definitely in front of Williams. It's again the bottom 6 that we normally see: Alfa Romeo, Haas and Williams. I'm really disappointed to see Williams still down there and at the bottom. I was really expecting them to be at the top of that trio, but it is definitely Alfa Romeo who seem to have the advantage going into practice 3 tomorrow. And there we go, that is both practice sessions of today all covered. Join me tomorrow for practice 3 and qualifying. And so it is 3 minutes past 4 in the afternoon on Saturday. Practice 3 is all done and dusted, and more importantly, qualifying is all concluded. But before that, it is practice 3, and it is actually led by Max Verstappen. Putting on the soft tyres, he actually beat the Mercedes pair by just over 2.5 tenths. Fairly promising ahead of qualifying. And in the new AWS like algorithm prediction things, he's actually predicted for pole position, just over a tenth from Lewis Hamilton, from Valtteri Bottas and Alex Albon in P4. And speaking of Albon, he is P4 currently in practice 3, doing a mega job, doing exactly what he needs, and in front of the McLarens of Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris in P7 and P5 respectively. A mega job for them. They have had a huge turnaround in pace, putting on those soft tyres, and they've actually ramped it up. Again, it's not looking good for my prediction that Renault is going to be best of the rest, as so far it's been Racing Point and McLaren, and not Renault just yet. They're a little bit further down the order, but definitely looking extremely promising for both cars for McLaren getting into Q3. But AlphaTauri, Jesus Christ, they are actually insane at this track. They love this track. 6th and 8th, Gasly ahead of Kvyat. Honestly, if both of them get into Q3, that's not going to be a surprise. And even if one of them manages to pop at P5 even, or P6, that is going to be mega for them, especially in their hunt for that midfield battle, as they've slightly fallen off now that Ferrari got that huge point score in Turkey and pulled a little bit further away from them in P6. So AlphaTauri needs something special in these last few races, and they have bloody got it. Then moving a bit further down the order, we do have the Racing Points in 9th and 10th, just ahead of the Renaults. 4 cars covered by 0.04 of a second. That's crazy. You literally couldn't ask for anything closer than that. 100th of a second is something crazy like 30 centimeters, 50 centimeters, like half a meter sort of time over the course of a what, 5.4 kilometer long track. Crazy stuff to have teams that close, and especially teams that are fighting for P3 in the Constructors' Championship. Mega to see. But again, Renault, I thought they were going to be a little bit closer than that, and it possibly looking borderline for Q3, but we'll have to wait and see. Unfortunately, a little bit further down the order, we still have the Ferraris in P13 and P15, but it is actually Vettel that is in front of Leclerc still. So definitely, hands down, 100%, that podium in Turkey has twiddled something in Vettel's brain, and he's actually outperforming Leclerc for once. If he can maintain this till the end of the year, that's going to put a massive spring in his step to get into Aston Martin and be ready and raring to go for 2021. But in between them is Giovinazzi in the Alfa Romeo. That Alfa Romeo is looking the best of the bottom 3 teams. And 100% I believe for Giovinazzi or Kimi Räikkönen, or either of them, but definitely Giovinazzi can get into Q2. He has looked on the pace this weekend, and the Alfa Romeo has seemed the better of those bottom 3 teams, but we can never discount Mr. Saturday, according to Ted Kravitz. George Russell, he can do something amazing with that car. And speaking of George Russell down in P16 ahead of the 2 Haas cars, Raikkonen in P19 and Latifi down in last once again. I've said it a lot of times about Nicholas Latifi. To me, he doesn't deserve to be in that seat, even in the Williams. Someone else needs to be in there, like Roy Nissany, or somebody else needs to be in that seat other than Nicholas Latifi. He's shown zilch in terms of promise, zilch in terms of pace, and zilch in terms of progression throughout the season. It's not looking good. But anyway, with practice 3 and therefore all of the practices covered, we move on into qualifying. A fairly boring qualifying, to be honest. Not a great deal happened. For once, I've actually bought a month pass on Now TV, as normally I just buy the 24-hour one for the races, but seeming as we've got 3 straight weeks worth of races, I thought, may as well buy it. It's basically the same price as buying 3 individual 24 ones. So I was actually able to watch qualifying for once. Not that it was very entertaining, not a great deal happened. But let us jump on in to Q1. It is topped by Lewis Hamilton with Racing Point's Lance Stroll in P2 and Albon P3 ahead of Bottas and Verstappen. Gasly popping up in P6, Sainz P7, then Ricciardo, the 2 Ferraris, Kvyat, Perez, Ocon, and then Russell. Russell makes it through into Q2. Mega stuff for the Williams. That surprised me. That really did. I honestly thought 100% the Alfa Romeos, or one of the Alfa Romeos, was going to get it over a Williams. And it is so impressive to see, what's his score now? Like 39-0 or something stupid like that against teammates. I think it's now the longest streak against teammates that George Russell now has of out-qualifying them. Lando Norris only just squeaks through in P15, and it is the Alfa Romeos who get knocked out again. Only just 0.02 of a second for Giovinazzi to making it in to Q2. So close, the closest of margins. Also, Kimi Räikkönen a little bit closer and ahead of the Haas cars in P18 and P19. A miserable weekend for Haas so far. I thought they were going to struggle in my pre-race review, but I didn't think they were going to struggle this much. I didn't think they were going to be the last of the back 3. I mean, they're not the last of the back 3 as Nicholas Latifi is rounding out that spot. He's a little bit closer to them than in previous sessions and previous races. He's only half a tenth down off of not being last, but I mean, he's still last again. Like I said before, he's just not showing any promise of improvements throughout this year compared to George Russell, who has. But with the usual suspects making it through into Q2, we jump on into that session now, and it is once again led by Lewis Hamilton from Max Verstappen this time, splitting the 2 Mercedes with Bottas in 3rd, Ricciardo banging his Renault into P4, ahead of Albon, who slips slightly further back from Max Verstappen, just losing a tiny bit of pace. Norris is P6, then Perez P7, Ocon P8 for Renault making it through to Q3 for the I think for the first time, second time, third time, something amount of times. But AlphaTauri have both made it through into Q3. That is ridiculous. That was the surprise of the session. That really, really came as an awesome surprise, and it's going to be mega for them tomorrow for the race to try and bag some awesome points ahead of Ferrari, who actually got knocked out. Both Ferraris out, but it is Sebastian Vettel again ahead of Leclerc on a track that Leclerc loves. Leclerc loves this track, the track where he got his first pole position, and his first win was cruelly taken away from him at this track. So Leclerc goes well here. And to have Sebastian Vettel beat him, that is promising. That is definitely promising. But sadly, they are both out of Q2, and that is the end of their running. And Lance Stroll down in P13 after being P2. P2 in Q1 and then P13 in Q2. He did complain on the radio about a slight miscommunication somewhere along the lines, but that's all we've heard about that. The commentators went and talked to Ottmar Schaffnauer from Racing Point, and he didn't know any further information about that miscommunication, and to be honest, I doubt we're going to find out what that miscommunication was. But something happened, and it meant that Lance Stroll missed out on a potential Q3 position. George Russell manages to go P14 for Williams, just a couple seconds off of the pace, and Carlos Sainz failed to set a time due to his McLaren having an odd sort of failure. Similar to Charles Leclerc in Spain, where something happened with the ERS package or the power unit package or something along those lines, locking the rear wheels, causing him to spin, and then he can't get the car started again. It caused a red flag during the session, so everyone had to abort their laps. There was 9 minutes left of Q2, and then everyone restarted again, managed to bang in all of these laps, but unfortunately for Carlos Sainz, P15 with an issue. But with the scenes all laid out for Q3, we jump on into that session right away, and it is a 98th pole position for Lewis Hamilton, an 11th front row lockout for Mercedes this year. Bonkers statistics, that is, and Lewis Hamilton just looked on rails. It was beautiful watching that lap. Purple sector after purple sector after purple sector on his final run to go, I think it was like 5 or 6 tenths faster, and then Bottas and then Verstappen went just a little bit quicker, but not quite quick enough, and he ended up being on pole by just under 3 tenths of a second. Unfortunately, Verstappen couldn't quite split the two Mercedes. That would have been interesting for the race if he could stay in front of one of them, but he's going to have to get a decent start tomorrow. He's starting on the clean side, which I suppose is a small little benefit for him. And then Alex Albon in P4, that is the job he needs to be doing. Yes, he's half a second, 6 tenths down on Max Verstappen. That doesn't particularly matter, but at least he doesn't have any riff-raff bollocks in front of him. It is just him and Max Verstappen. So if he can get a decent start, yes, again, Albon is starting on the slightly dirtier side of the track, Verstappen is not. But if Albon can get a decent start and ahead of Verstappen, it may actually somewhat persuade Red Bull to try and keep him. Not 100% sure. And then Sergio Perez manages to bang his Racing Point P5 ahead of both of the Renaults. That was a stellar performance from Sergio Perez to put that lap in. The Renaults looked comfortable. Daniel Ricciardo especially looked like he was going to be best of the rest after the Q2 performance. And for Sergio Perez to come in and beat that, and to go P5 just behind Albon as well by half a tenth of a second, that is close. And seriously, if he loses a drive, that's going to suck. It's really going to suck. But just behind Sergio Perez are the two Renaults, split by 2 thousandths of a second. Now, we were talking about 400ths of a second being something like half a metre to a metre. Now, 2 thousandths of a second, that's nothing. That is nothing. Nothing split the two Renaults. It would have been awesome for Ocon to outqualify Ricciardo again, because it is now 14-1, I believe, in the qualifying battles head-to-heads, which isn't the best statistic to have in Ocon's favour. But 100% to be close and to be 6th and 7th, and to be the only midfield team with both cars in the top 10 is definitely a positive for Renault to move forward in the race and launch an attack on Racing Point and on McLaren as well. Then in 8th is Pierre Gasly, just behind Ocon, Norris P9 and Kvyat P10. And with that, qualifying is all done and dusted. Join me tomorrow on Sunday for the race. Well, like I said in my speed review, just in the corner if you haven't seen it, it is currently 8:30 on the Sunday afternoon just after the race. We can all learn something from today. For all those that were hating on the idea of the halo being introduced as just an aesthetic rubbishness, you can all be silenced today. You have to be. I'm sorry, you have to be. After witnessing what we saw today during the Bahrain Grand Prix, that has to shut everybody up. Even Grosjean himself on his Instagram said that he was originally against the halo and has said that if it wasn't there, like he didn't want it to be when it was introduced, he wouldn't be able to make that video today. But let's jump on into race day, Sunday the 29th of November, and it was a race that was won by Lewis Hamilton, but we do start with Romain Grosjean having that absolutely enormous crash, small contact with Daniel Kvyat, and then escaping the flames as well. Those were the best images, watching him on his own jump away from the fire. That, hands down, is the moment of the weekend, and if you didn't vote him for driver of the day, I don't know. He got the majority of the votes anyway, but there were lots of other people that voted for Hamilton, for Perez, for other people, and I personally just do not see any reason why it should not have been 100% towards Grosjean today. But like I said at the start of this little segment, it was Lewis Hamilton who enjoyed a nice Grand Prix victory, almost lights to flag. It wasn't just one lap he missed as he pitted just before Max Verstappen. Verstappen then pitted after, I think it was lap 19 and lap 20. Honestly, an absolutely faultless weekend for Lewis. 5 Grand Prix victories in a row, on his way to 100 pole positions this season as well, just 2 more left. And he can also equal the all-time record for wins in a season, which is 13. He does, however, have to win the next 2 races, the last 2 of the season, which, I mean, he's looking likely. He is looking on a completely other level, and Bottas, as we will discuss later, has had hopeless luck, and over the next couple of races, we'll need to see if that can dissipate. But Max Verstappen in P2, honestly, that's the best he could hope for. He got the fastest lap as well, gained a bonus point, closing in on Valtteri Bottas just a small little bit. But yeah, there wasn't much he could do against the pace of Hamilton. Hamilton was just on a completely different level, and Verstappen, second is as good as he could ever do, and he just needs to try and hunt down second place in the championship. He says he doesn't care about it, and he's not too fussed whether he finishes second, but I think deep down, he actually does care quite a lot, and it would mean so much to Red Bull as well to continue that momentum into the winter and therefore into 2021 if they can get in front of one of the Mercedes. But Alex Albon managed to put his Red Bull on the podium for the 2nd time in his career and the 2nd time this season. He was a little bit quicker than the midfield, constantly, not baffled by them at all, and always P4. But he was just a little bit slower than the likes of Sergio Perez and especially Max Verstappen. We'll get on to Perez a little bit later, as Albon did kind of luck in to the podium, but you've got to be in that position to luck into the podium anyway. It's like other podium contenders and other first-time podium people. You've got to put yourself in that position in order to luck into it. So it's not 100% luck, it's the skill and the patience to be where he was before the incident with Perez. Honestly, I would hate to be Red Bull. I have no idea what they should do. Just do something. Keep Perez somehow, but also keep Albon or not. I don't know. It's a hard decision. It's a very hard decision, but they're going to have to make it. They're going to have to make a decision very soon. I don't want them to make any decisions in 2021. I don't want them to be chopping and changing drivers again. Make a decision at the end of the season or before, ready for 2021. Don't do it halfway through the season. That's just annoying. But Carlos Sainz for McLaren, what a strong performance after a miserable qualifying. P15, out in Q2, engine issues, started on the soft tyre actually. I thought that was really interesting. And even after the red flag after Grosjean's crash, he chose to start on the soft tyre again. So I'm a little bit surprised at that, but he made it work and he finished P4. Absolutely amazing. Then Lando Norris as well, completing an enormous points haul for McLaren at 22 points as well. I think that's their 2nd highest or the highest points haul of this season. I'm not 100% sure. I may have to check that in the edit. But yeah, absolutely ridiculous scenes from McLaren. Some solid driving from both drivers, especially Sainz. I actually missed that in the Sainz segment. Really strong overtakes on people like Leclerc, his future teammate, and then also Norris. He was just exceptional throughout this race as well. He was always up there, but then Sainz actually managed to catch up, and some decent battles here and there. But Gasly once again putting in an amazing performance in that AlphaTauri. A solid drive to go P6. He was P5 at one point during the race, but slightly fell off due to his strategy that he was on and lost out to both of the McLarens, or at least Carlos Sainz. I can't remember exactly who he lost out to, but he was definitely P5 at one point and lost out in the latter half of the race, even though it was a little bit of a bore. After the first couple of incidents, not much really happened in the race, but we got some decent inter-team battles and some intra-team battles as well, so that was quite decent. But absolutely a performance that Gasly can be proud of, especially after getting into Q3 in qualifying as well. He moved forward from his grid spot, which is exactly what you want. Daniel Ricciardo and Renault, though, 7th. I think I'm a bit. I am a bit disappointed with that, you know. So I thought they were going to be the midfield team to contend with, and genuinely in qualifying and sort of running up to the latter bits of practice 3, they seemed like they were. Then in the race, didn't work out. They are extremely late at making necessary team order calls, and when I say necessary team order calls, I don't mean things like Austria 2002 or some of the Mercedes ones that have been before. I mean, like, literally the teammate is holding the other car up. Ocon was slower on the preferred strategy than Ricciardo, and they should have made the call when they were battling with the McLarens, but it came too late, and then they did eventually swap, but he was too far back, he couldn't really do anything. And then they had another tussle when Ricciardo came out of the pits. It was just a bit of a mess inter-team battle and intra-team battle-wise, and something that could have easily been avoided with just a quicker team order call. And for some reason I don't have a photo of Bottas. I thought I did, but I don't. He is P8, and another miserable weekend, exactly like Turkey. Just nothing really went right. It had a crap start, the first start. It was abysmal, down to P6 at one point. Then the crash happened. Then they didn't go on the 200-meter loops because of all the people going wide. They instead went on the safety car 2 line, which is a little bit past the main straight. So rather than restarting P6 where he was when the red flag was called, he actually started P4 instead, because they reset the race a little bit before all of the incidents and all of the kerfuffles happened. He then had a puncture as well, which put him all the way at the back, and then he struggled to get past Alfa Romeos. He couldn't get past Raikkonen. Then he got stuck behind Vettel. The Mercedes doesn't like dirty air, but to be honest, no car likes dirty air. It turns the Mercedes, which is immense in clean air, into a midfield team that can't do anything, because no designer designs their car to run behind other cars. You don't do that. You design your car to be as quick as you bloody can, and Mercedes have done that exceptionally well. And when you chuck it behind another car, it turns into a normal racing car. And that's when we separate the racers from the boys, the men from the boys. I don't know where I was going with that. But yeah, ultimately another poor effort from Valtteri Bottas due to no fault of his own, but he seems to be getting the most unluck in the Mercedes garage. Then Esteban Ocon in P9. I've spoken about Renault. I didn't really have the pace in the Renault battle, and he held up Ricciardo, costing the team points overall in the constructors, but they gained on racing points, so I guess that's a positive. But they could have gained a little bit more points and critically taken points away from McLaren. Then Charles Leclerc in P10, another driver to luck into some points, just a single point. Yeah, struggled, didn't he? Ferrari overall struggled this weekend. Didn't make it into Q3. I was very surprised at that. And then race pace, it just didn't seem to exist either. Yeah, he defended well. He defended well, especially against Sainz and other incidents like that. But other than that, not really much happened, and he just sort of went backwards. Then we have Danny Kvyat in P11. Now, I would not be surprised in the slightest if his confidence or anything at all was knocked due to him being involved in the Grosjean incident. I'm not going to say he caused the Grosjean incident, he was just involved in it. Grosjean steered right, hit Kvyat, Grosjean into barriers, Kvyat continued onwards. So after seeing that, and after knowing that you were involved in such a horrific accident, I'm sure that would do something to you mentally, regardless of who you are. I'm fully aware that these are just in their prime athletes and are able to compartmentalize literally anything, but I don't care who you are. That is going to play a little bit on your head, and I guess that kind of showed, as he did sort of punt into Lance Stroll a little bit, flipping Lance Stroll over. It was sort of a 50-50, I feel, definitely a racing incident-ish. It was sort of two cars into one corner, never really goes, and Lance Stroll lost out massively. But the stewards deemed it was Kvyat's fault, and he received a 10-second time penalty, which he served in the pit lane. Then we have George Russell in P12, the maximum he could have achieved. Again, another driver to suffer from a crap start. An amazing qualifying. He is a Super Saturday performer, went backwards at the start and then made up for it. So perhaps if he hadn't had a shit start, points may have been on the table. So I'm going to classify this as a race as a missed opportunity again for Williams and for George Russell to score some points, but definitely a solid drive, just not one of his best. Then Vettel, Vettel P13. He struggled, caught up in the Stroll incident, backed off, slowed down, had some possible debris damage on his car, and then he just said the car wasn't what he drove in qualifying in practice, and he didn't like it, wasn't comfortable, and it was evident. He wasn't on the pace at all, and seeing as he was quicker than Leclerc this whole weekend, throughout practice and even qualifying, and then to not be on the pace of him at all and to finish on 2 separate laps, yeah, oof. Then we've got Nicholas Latifi, and I've actually found a picture of Nicholas Latifi. Granted, it is a practice picture, not one from the race, but I don't know. I didn't see Latifi at all, didn't see him do anything, didn't even see him get lapped, so I have nothing to comment on Nicholas Latifi. Kimi Räikkönen in P15 for Alfa Romeo. Now he did some amazing defensive driving, showing his expertise in the sport against Valtteri Bottas, and also was pushing Sebastian Vettel as well. So at the same time, defending from a Mercedes, you're attacking a Ferrari in front. He's doing both exceptionally well. But other than that, the Alfa Romeo just didn't really have much race pace, as evident by Giovinazzi just behind him as well in P16. Again, another driver that I didn't really see much of and didn't really see anything happen during the race at all. Then we've got Kevin Magnussen as the last of the race finishers in P17. Now Kevin Magnussen was another one of those drivers involved in the Stroll incident. He ran over a lot of the debris and damaged his front wing. I think he actually ran into Sebastian Vettel, actually, thinking about it. I'm fairly sure that's what happened, and my camera keeps freezing. That's really annoying. But yes, Magnussen caught up in the Stroll incident, had to pit for a new front wing. That just put him all the way at the back. Plus the Haas was one of the slowest cars on the field, so he couldn't really make any ground up once he'd lost it all. But then Sergio Perez, absolute heartbreak. Absolute heartbreak. That was so tough. He was in P3 the whole way. He had an awesome start up to P3 from P5, I think he started, something like that. Got past Bottas, got past Albon. He was running solid all the way consistently in P3 up until lap 53, 54, and his Mercedes engine went boop, just boop, boop, dead. Smoke, puff, gone. He tried his best to keep it going, and then it just caught fire and just got worse and worse and worse. Yeah, lost out on a podium position and 15 points, which would have been absolutely crucial in the Constructors' Championship. And then lastly, Lance Stroll. Again, through no fault of his own. He's had a lot of incidents that have been no fault of his own. Russia getting punted by Leclerc, and now this one being punted by Kvyat, spinning and tumbling out of the race, which again really hindered Racing Point's Constructors' Championship's hope to finish in P3. And with the race all done and dusted, we will take a look at the championships. Lewis Hamilton leading by 131 points. Massive, monumental. I think that's Hamilton's biggest gap he's ever had in a championship. I'll have to triple check that. Then Verstappen is closing in on Valtteri Bottas, just 12 points in it, as Ricciardo takes P4 from Sergio Perez, who has Leclerc super close behind him. The two McLaren switch again with Albon joint with Sainz. Then Gasly is 10th with Stroll 11th. And in the Constructors, it is McLaren who have a comfortable-ish 17 points over Racing Point, 27 points over Renault, and Ferrari are just behind that group as well. And some visualizations for people that are interested. Lewis Hamilton, 5 wins in a row, on the up, almost at 350 points, with Verstappen threatening Valtteri Bottas's P2 and the uber close midfield, and exactly the same in the Constructors' Championship as well. And lastly, one last little thing before we go, the Formula 1.5 Championships. This one is including Albon and therefore Red Bull, so excluding the two Mercedes and Verstappen, shuffling everybody else up and scoring the points like so. Ricciardo maintains his championship lead as Racing Point just maintain their Constructors' Championship lead, with the points looking a little bit like this for the Drivers' Championship. Ricciardo 13 points clear of Perez, who is 1 point clear of Leclerc, and in the Constructors it is Racing Point who just have a 16-point lead over Renault. And there we go, that is the end of my race weekend review for Bahrain. If you have enjoyed, please subscribe down below as well. 87% of you who watch my videos are not subscribed, so if you feel like I've earned it, then please hit that button down below. It means a lot. If you've disagreed with anything that I've said in these videos, please let me know in the comments and I will make sure to respond to them. Same with if you have agreed, let me know. I am a conversation starter. But that is all I've got for you today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed, and I will catch you in the next episode with whatever and whenever I decide to make it. I'll see you guys then.